earlier that, of course, in the first part, we'll perhaps talk about GDP, but let's flip over now and start our conversation from the second half. In a boost aimed at addressing the high-cost liquefied petroleum gas in the market, the federal government has taken decisive action by considering a ban on the exportation of cooking gas. The Minister of Petroleum and Gas, Mr. Eko, disclosed this during an internal stakeholders workshop in Abuja. According to the minister, this development is considering or coming against the backdrop of mounting concerns over the escalating cost of cooking gas. The recent spike in cooking gas prices shows a 12.5 kilogram of gas was selling as high as 17,000 and 18,000 naira compared to 9,000 it sold a few months ago. Well, to provide some perspective, I'm joined by policy and public affairs analyst, Mr. Olu Sheson Okwande. He joins me live in the studio. Thank you. It's good to have you. First time with me on the show here. And thank God it's Friday.
Good afternoon, Frank, and great to be here. First time on the show on a Friday.
Exactly.
I'm sure we are here to justice the mind.
Okay, so let's get into the conversation. What do you make of this development? Perhaps, not even perhaps now, what they are saying, what the Minister of Petroleum is saying is that this move is aimed at curtailing or creating a surplus within the domestic market.
Yeah, it will be good we have a good perspective of what this policy is all about. When you talked about the issue of LPG, that has to do with gas, the domestic one that we make use of, you discover that of so much that we are actually producing, only 45% of it is actually set aside for domestic use. The rest are actually being exported out of the country by the players in the industry. And you ask yourself the question, that amidst that you are actually exporting what you're producing, you are technically, again, importing part of this thing. And that is the major bedrock of why the increase in the price, knowing fully well that we don't have stability with foreign exchange. So the move by the Minister for Gas is the right one. At least if we can make do with that which we have locally, the major constraint has been around the lack of good infrastructure to actually sustain that which you are producing. So rather than wasting it, they will export it out to generate revenue. But we feel that with what we have currently in instability with a foreign exchange, and knowing fully well that when we produce, we export, and at the same time technically import those goods, it does not make good business sense rather than saying we should have it all produced locally. So it's the right step in the right direction, if you ask me. It's long awaited for. This will also intensify more in the area of growing the infrastructure that has to do with that area, because it's written and it's proven that Nigeria is one of the major producer of gas, considering what we have from our crude oil exploitation.
Especially when you look at the reserve with over 200 trillion cubic feet down there.
Yeah. But you see, aside that, is a sector that has not actually been tapped into. And that's why when this administration came in, at least I was one of the people that gave kudos of we separating the oil from the gas. There are two distinct things. We have so much capacity that we can tap into in the gas area. And I think that's part of what we're saying. If we are able to domesticate some of these things rather than exporting them, it will put the government on their toes to see how we can increase the infrastructure of making quality delivery of this, so that when we are self-sufficient, we can start talking of exporting to outsiders.
So let's get it clear. In your opening, you spoke about how that we are consuming only 45% and the rest we export. So it means that the challenge is not about production, isn't it? It's that we have enough, and that is why we are exporting. So if we don't have enough, because simple economic theory is when a product is in such a supply, then the prices will rise, isn't it? So it's not a question of production or the volume of what we have here.
It's not a question of production, like you say. You've said the basic understanding of economics. When the demand outweighs the supply, definitely you should expect a spike or increase in the price. But when you overflood the market with the supply, and then you have to be begging individual to make use of some of those things. And don't forget, the demand for this particular product suddenly went spike because of the cloud for this climate change, green energy, and the like. Even though there's a clause, the purchasing power of an average citizen to actually afford it is not there. But if you are able to maximize that which you produce locally, and you have a supply in excess of what you're demanding for, it will definitely fall down the price. And you remove that factor that you have in there of when you are importing it, the foreign exchange factor that is in it, that is not stable currently, you have a leverage of you having everybody partaking and enjoying the dividend of the God-given natural resources that we have in the country.
In your own opinion, do you think that this development, stopping producers from exporting this product, do you think this approach will address or will drive down because that's the aim, to drive down the prices of this commodity?
Of course it will, because if you are able to divert that which you are actually producing, of which you feel before now, the percentage was not to that level. They gave room for it, but because of the greener energy, it has opened up, and a lot of people are actually embracing the greener energy. You discover that the yearn for people actually going the route of using kerosene and other means of cooking has actually reduced because of the benefit that they get from this particular thing. So for me, the production is there. It's just for us to change the table and the dynamics of sharing some of those things. It may not go well with the producers, which are the companies that are actually set up to actually produce some of these things, because it's of much more benefit for them to export and make their money in the first gate compared to them selling to us locally. But since the government who owns the product is telling you that this is the direction I feel we need to go, the only aspect of it is if they are backing down. How much are we prepared as a country to build up infrastructure to absorb some of those things? Because you can see that major player in this oil and gas sector are actually quitting. But how prepared are Nigerians to actually tap into it in case they decide to excuse themselves? And it's just what we've actually been preaching. Can we start domesticating some of the things we have in the country? We are not short of natural resources. We are not short of human intellectual or human capital in such a way to drive some of the infrastructure things we have. But the commitment on the part of the government to have the infrastructure to harness the resources and the human capital is just what we are lacking, and that's the technical know-how that they are providing. So if we are able to brace up, put up the infrastructure in place, we will be self-sufficient. After we are self-sufficient, we're able to have it in that sector, then we can think of giving it out to other people to benefit from.
Let's talk about, last September, the Association of gas suppliers came together and said, look, the government has to do something about gas. They have to intervene in the sector, otherwise we'll see the price, skyrocketing. And we're seeing the price now, but
it's about
12.5 kilograms.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you bought it recently.
Yeah, I bought for 15.5, but okay. The current report I had is about 18,000 naira for 12.5 kilograms.
What would you consider an uphill task for the Minister of Petroleum? Because Mr. Ekpo, it seems to have the sector seems to be clogged with a lot of challenges. Yes, if we have these resources, but yet the prices is going on, and it's not as if it is because the demands are high. That is why the prices are going on. We can produce enough. So what would you consider that challenge, that big headache for the Minister of Petroleum and Gas?
Yeah, Frank, fundamentally, I will always come from the area of the regulators monitoring the activities that is going on back then. A lot of time, because we don't follow through some of those things, we have diversions here and there, and it is the common man that bear the brunt. A lot are actually being, taken out, but when it's to lash it out to people, people want to maximize. Because every Nigerian you looked at, eye up there are capitalists. And what they look out for is the best way to maximize their profit against humanity, against even their fellow citizens. So the first and foremost thing I think I want to charge the minister with is the regulators. How are they able to monitor what is actually the gas that we're actually generating? How we are monitoring the spread to make sure that it's actually not being diverted. Most of the time, some of these natural resources that we have are actually being mined by, unscrupulous elements that actually divert those things and at the same time use it against the citizen. But if you have the monitoring team who are there strictly, and when people know that if we venture into this, there won't be any gain for us because there are controls to check the activity of what is going on. You discover that we will maximize that which you have as a nation. And I consider that as the first task to be given to him, proper and effective monitoring. The other aspect of it looks in line with monitoring is around the middle class, the middlemen that we have in the businesses. Practically, they are
retailers,
the retailers. In fact, from the wholesalers to the retailers, because the retailers definitely at times will go about to sell what they want, what they are buying, because the middleman who actually bought in bulk is selling to them at a high price. Practically everybody is surrounded with saying it's dollar, it's dollar, it's dollar. How much of it is dollarized as against what we have in there? So the ministry must stand up to the task to make sure that the middlemen are controlled. We have said it that part of the things we need holistically as a control is the price control agency to rise up to the task. You can't just wake up today and the next morning you are hearing a spike in the cost of things when the cost of production has not increased in any way. And because the middleman knows that the end user do not have deep understanding, they ride on that ignorance and they keep increasing things the way they are. But if the price control agency are out there to tempt things even before it get to the end user, you discover that we have a reasonable pricing that will definitely favor the producer and those that are actually going to consume.
And now, I mean, this comes to mind. And when you talk about price control board or agency or group, that also question fairness, market competition, and giving room for players to operate freely in the market. Do you have any concern about that? Because it will seem that there has to be a free market for people to operate, and that's how the economy grows. Secondly, we also need to talk about, you talk about the middleman. How is the government engaging these its stakeholders? I'm aware they had that meeting in Abuja where he was speaking to them, but they get beyond just coming together. There has to be perhaps these other middlemen needs to see what the government is doing. So are you concerned about market competition, a free market?
Yeah, free market is inevitable. You just have to open the market for everyone to see, and that's where transparency plays a key role. Before I venture into any businesses, I want to see how it operates. I want to see the transparency in it and have the confidence that when you invest, you recoup so much. For a situation where you have very few, monopolizing activity, it becomes a challenge for other people to come into. So we must break down monopoly in such a way that individuals that are actually acting, you see, for the very few that are actually in the arm of producing it, they might be very few. But the middlemen, when they have access to it, a lot of excuses that is not known to the end and the retailers actually being capitalized on. But when you open the market, every one of us can come into it, and this one can come out and say, okay, after getting it, this is what I'm saying. And you are like, oh, if this is the case, just the way we liberalize the issue of saying petrol is sell at this cost, everybody now look for the cheapest area where they want to get it. Whether you are selling to break even or you are selling at a wide margin, all we want is that we are getting it at a cheaper rate, and that's the person we patronize. So you discover that opening the market is very fundamental and key. And because we have not been able to manage the middlemen, you see, in every sphere, not only in the gas sector, in every sphere, the middlemen are more of capitalists, and they do everything in all that they do to maximize, the profit against, the social development that we can consider as a nation. And that's why government must take their ground and stand to make sure that their activity are checkmate so that we can have a better Nigeria.
Few things to look at before I let you go. Let's talk about investment in the sector over the years, which the PI Act has come to address. But what's your stand as regards the level of implementation the PIA Act is supposed to open up the sector where everybody will come invest. In fact, you know that your investment is safe. Speak to us. There are concerns that the PIA still needs to be reviewed. It's not holistic. Some are saying it's not holistic. So speak to that.
Yeah, you see, when you talk about PIA, most of the time I tell individuals before the last modification of that PIA, it took our country over 20-something years that we're actually swallowing in the same thing all the same way. You ask yourself, how much have we implemented, even in the improvement and the changes that we actually have in the PIA? I made to, in the PIA, you've had opportunity where you have room where the taxes that these people that operate in the oil and gas are paid are quite being snowballed in such a way that they have so many reliefs in such a way that the government understand their contribution to the economy and they are actually giving them a safe landing. If you are asking for a review, you discover that which we have on ground, we have not actually maximized the usage. And because of the inconsistency at times on the part of both the regulators and the implementers of some of this policy, you discover that people are not encouraged to venture into it. How much enlightenment are we giving out there for an average person to understand the gains that they can have if they have their resources being invested in that sector? You discover that a lot of this is actually not. So we are actually calling out the regulators. Give enlightenment to have understanding of what people can benefit if you actually ventured your money rather than investing outside the shore of the country. A lot of opportunity abound, but because of the inconsistency at times in the policy, people are scared. But if you are consistent with the policy, rather than saying that let's keep reviewing and reviewing, you must first practicalize that which you have. Look at the pitfalls before you can ask for you saying let's work and improve on it. We have not actually implemented in fullness the improvement that we have in PIA for this sector, and I consider that must be an area of engagement by the stakeholders, the regulators, the major players, the agencies themselves, the ministry that is concerned with the oil and gas sector, as we speak.
Well, I think a good place to leave it. Thank you so much for your great analysis, as always. I'm joined, I've been talking to Policy and Public Affairs Analyst, Mr. Olusegun Okwade. Thank you for coming on Business Nigeria.
Great to be part of it.
And you have a great day.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll take a break now.